Goldsmith and Pentecost, thank you and your crews. Saw all of your crews out working very hard today, cleaning up debris. So nicely done. I know you guys are working hard. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Brent.
Yep. Thank you, Brent.
Just letting everybody know that we are live on my end.
Tracy, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Take roll, please.
Harrington,
Here.
Hoffman,
Here.
Pollock,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Wason.
Here.
Agenda's up before you, and there's no additions or deletions, so motion to accept would be in order.
So
I'll
move.
move. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Consent agenda. Anything in there that you want to pull out and talk about first before we move on it? If not, a motion be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Kevin, your game.
Okay, thank you. I've got some project updates for you guys. We'll start with Fairgreen Road in Kansas. We've contacted the MPO and they will be proceeding with speed studies for both of those roads, Fairgreen Road and Kansas Avenue. The police department's taken some data for them, so that should speed the process a little bit. But right now, both of those are signed for 35 miles per hour. So I think it's a good idea to proceed with this speed study. So does the police department. Southwest Growth Utility Project. The contractors completed the new sanitary sewer from Jones Boulevard. And now they've started work on the access drive at the new lift station. That's west of I-380. We met with them last week. They stated that they have been delayed with derecho, I guess on some of their deliveries, but they still feel that they can meet their completion dates. And the final completion on that is May of 2021. St. Andrews Drive, all the street, sidewalk, and trail paving has now been completed. Currently, they're working on backfilling all the sidewalks and trails, and they're setting the limestone walls in the roundabout. So there's still quite a few things to be completed. They have to do pavement smoothness testing, pavement markings, signage, landscape and plantings, streetlights, control cabinet and seating. But we're estimating about a mid-September roadway opening. The Aquatic Center HVAC replacement. They set the new Duran dehumidification unit today. So that was good to see. Next, they'll be connecting the power probably in the next couple of days, and then controls, installation, and testing and balancing. So they're getting very close, and we think they'll make their completion date. They're real close right now, and that's August 31st. Ranshaw Way Phase 5 design work and property acquisitions continue. We submitted the preliminary plans to the DOT for review and comment. And we're tentatively planning for a presentation to the City Council. I think it'll be in the second meeting in September. The next deadline is check plan submittal to the DOT in October. Next project is Dubuque Street Phase 1. We submitted our first 30% plan set to staff last week. And now we're scheduling for a staff review meeting. I think it'll be next week, probably next Monday or Tuesday. And then the last project is the Ranshaw House renovation Phase 2. Bids were received August 19th, and Alan Wieskamp is in attendance tonight to answer any questions you may have regarding that. That's all I have, unless you have questions.
Questions? Thanks, Kevin. Mr. Heyer.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually going to kick it over to Michael for an update on storm cleanup and recovery. So Michael, if you wouldn't mind taking it over.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Council. So we are currently just today finished up first round with a complete cleanup of the town. We were able to get through every street and remove all major brush and tree debris, barring that there wasn't a car or something in front of the areas. That was done with the help of Johnson County Emergency Management, helping us get Johnson County secondary roads. Lone Tree, City of Lone Tree has been helping, or helped one day. Johnson County secondary roads has helped. They're in their second week now of hauling. My staff, park staff, water department, wastewater, a lot of people from the city have helped on this. So it's not just street department by any means. And then Johnson County Conservation Group has been helping us with some of the branches that are still hanging in the trees. So it's ongoing. We'll start in on round 2. We've had great success from the public bringing debris to our public storage site off of 290 Golfview Drive. And so it's been quite an event, but it's been a positive one as far as the cleanup afterwards. So I'd take any questions that you might have.
Next timetable?
I'm sorry?
Your timetable from here on out?
So timetable, I'm hoping to get through our round 2 this week. A lot of the major areas, like the old part of town, those will take a little bit of time, but your outer line, newer subdivisions, we don't probably foresee a whole bunch to come out of those subdivisions. Most of that was taken care of on the first round. We do have a timetable set up as far as September 7th for residents to get that debris up to the right-of-way between the sidewalk and curb. At that time, that would be our last pass through to clean that debris up. And that's brush debris, tree debris. We want to make sure that they're not putting anything but those items in there, because it'll all be going through a grinder or a chipper that will turn it into mulch. Timetable after that would be September 14th, which would be when we will actually close the drop-off site there at 290 Golfview Drive. And then Guy Goldsmith is taking charge of the how that will be processed and ground down at that time. The pile's probably at this time about 15,000 to 18,000 cubic yards. Really hard to kind of fathom that number till you see the pile. So pretty large amount.
Michael, or Mayor, may I say something? Michael, thank you for your leadership, for acknowledge. I mean, obviously your team, all the additional city staff. It's just great to hear in this meeting and publicly the inter-county workings and collaboration and help there. So just thank you for the countless hours. Obviously, you're sitting in your office right now. So just appreciate it. It's refreshing to drive around and not see that on the streets. And just, I think it kind of having lots of conversations about it and just what that does to people's sort of psyche. So it's wonderful to see it cleaned up and just the proactiveness you've had from the get-go on it. So just thank you. Please pass that on to your teams.
Thank you. Yes, I'll pass along and definitely, like I said, we've been on the giving end at times where other communities have needed it, and this time we needed it, and those people were there to help us. So it's a good relationship with those communities around us. Good to have that. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question for Mike.
Yeah.
So Mike, either you or Ryan, what can homeowners expect in the way of expectation from the city with, I think everybody understands they need to clean up and get the stuff that's on the ground to the curb. What about the stuff, what about the limbs that are hanging, that are broken, that are a safety concern? Is there going to be a process that the city's going to, communicate to folks if we notice those as safety hazards moving forward, in kind of enforcing or making sure that people get those limbs cut down that are still hanging?
So the way we're approaching that, Brent, is a lot of that is in the older sections of town, those more established trees. And Johnson County Conservation Group has been working on those areas while we've been hauling. I believe Guy's team is going in there after the trails are cleared up, and they're going to start identifying those trees that are basically right of way and up. If you draw a vertical line, whether it's in the private sector or whether it's in the public right. Let me correct myself. It'd be any tree right away and up, whether that's in that public side of it or it's a tree that's a private tree hanging over in the public side. We'll be taking care of those simply because of the safety concern. And then I did reach out to a couple different vendors on getting help from them so that we can move that process along quicker. Obviously, that's a high demand industry right now with what Cedar Rapids has going on. So we will definitely keep at it to clean any of these potential problem areas up as soon as possible. The first concern was just to get the debris out of there and out of the way for basically first responders or, some of these areas, hydrants were being hidden, things like that. Just get it opened up.
Mr. Goldsmith, how did the parks turn out?
Yourself, Guy.
Guy,
Sorry.
we can't hear you.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. The parks are looking pretty well. The only one we really have left is Beaver Creek Park. We have some hangars there that we're going to have to address. We're hoping to get down there tomorrow, but we were at the fire station today. There was a really large tree there that was really, really dangerous, hanging over a garage. Took us all day to get that down. The trail system, we're about 3/4 of the way through on that. But anything that's really dangerous, we've already addressed. So I think we're sitting pretty well there. We are planning on moving into the old part of town because there are some hazardous ones there that we really want to address. Like I say, we're trying to address the most hazardous stuff first and come back to get the rest of it afterwards.
Gentlemen, I really commend yourselves and your teams on doing really a fantastic job for what's been done with everything that occurred here in North Liberty and the cooperation that you've given each other, as well as the help from the outside communities and EMA. So nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't mean to pile on here, guys. Pardon the pun, but I wanted to say the same thing. It's stunning to see the amount of material that's over at the drop-off site. What I've seen, both in video and pictures, but also driving by over there. Do you guys anticipate having enough space for the material that we'll be collecting, or do you have any issues with getting that mulched up as the season after this has passed by?
Well, I think we're going to have plenty of room down there, and thank goodness we have that site.
Right.
We're blessed to have that site. As far as the product, we've been trying to separate logs from brush because really the logs, once they're ground up, they provide very, very good tree mulch. So I want to keep that separate from the brush. And also that will give an opportunity for the people coming in the grind. They have a little better idea of what they're getting into if you have it separate. I just know that from past experience. But the rest of it, I think we'll do like we have in the past. What's ground up will be in a pile and compost down over time. But yes, that site, I believe, is going to have plenty of capacity to take on everything that we have.
Awesome. Thank you, Guy. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thank you both. I mean, the whole departments have been working, overtime, just getting things up, and it has really paid off. So thank you. I can't say any more than they have already said, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Howard, do you have anything additional?
One quick item of note related to this, in addition to all the cleanup that's going on, the folks out in the field have a fair amount of documentation to do. So it's not just going around, and picking stuff up, and then all that documentation gets sent to Tracy, that goes then to FEMA for reimbursement. And Tracy also needs to be recognized here because of the amount of dealing with two disasters, basically, or a pandemic and a disaster. And she sat through more FEMA presentations and has probably done more FEMA paperwork this year than she has in the past 5. And so many thanks to her, and hopefully we'll see good reimbursement from FEMA on these projects as well. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. As far as Mayor's report, we're trying to have a transportation committee meeting this Thursday evening, so we'll keep you abreast of the results of that. Other than that, we'll turn it over now to social justice and racial equality. Ryan, is that yours, I think?
Well, thank you, and I'll get this kicked off, and there are several people on the meeting here, including our chief, Diane Venega, and our communications director, Nick Burgess, who've been involved in a lot of this as well. And what I thought we could do tonight is I wanted to just talk through the document I sent out earlier today. And what that was is it's essentially the last page of the social justice and racial equity packet, or the last page of that packet. But I've added some, I guess, a progress report or updates on some of the things that our team has been working on since the end of July, since we probably earlier than that, since we started talking about some of this. So I think, the intent, at least my thought here, and maybe there's different intent, but the intent tonight would be to review this and then, one, make sure we're going in the right direction, that the city council is comfortable with the direction we're headed, and then also talk about potential other ideas or programs or projects that the city council would like to see implemented, or at least gather more information on, and we can come back then and talk about those a little bit more. But I guess that's my thought, and certainly if there are others, we can get to that. But maybe first I'll just start by highlighting some of the things that I've put on paper for you earlier today. So I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. Obviously, you have it, and we're going to put it on the website so folks can see some of the progress we're making. But I do want to highlight a few things. And, one of the things that we talked about right away was getting public feedback and having those conversations. And think you all know we hosted six listening posts in late July and early August. I think we had a pretty good turnout. Given we're in the middle of a pandemic, we did a couple in person and a couple four of them via Zoom. Excuse me. But I think in talking with our group, there's more that the city can do in terms of outreach and in terms of communicating with our residents in our neighborhoods. And an idea that Nick and his team have come up with, I alluded to in this document, is called the Great Neighborhoods Initiative. And I've asked Nick just to give a high level of that to this group, and we'll be sharing more information as we kind of vet some of this, but just to give you an idea of what we're thinking. And so Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So we're calling it the Great Neighborhoods Initiative, and what it is we're building out a framework to build better relationships with our community and for communication equity, right, both ways. You know, we heard a lot of the listening posts that the relationship piece is important, and that's something we know we need to improve, as well as some of that systemic issues. So basically our goals for this initiative is to build a framework to improve community spirit, offer enhanced sense of community safety, as well as to increase neighborhood level problem solving, you know, some of those nuisance things that we might be able to resolve without law enforcement, as well as to have more positive engagement between the city and its residents, as well as sort of helping foster some future government leaders and hopefully bring some of those folks into missions and elected office later. So what we're looking to do is essentially find volunteers to serve as neighborhood ambassadors in their neighborhoods, and we're going to specifically we're using some metrics about where we know folks are less engaged with us as a city. You know, we looked at a few different things, including, you know, where are our hot spots for next door, where are hot spots for some of these other things. And so we're going to work and make sure we target those areas, as well as build it out throughout the rest of the community.
And again, thank you, Nick. And again, we just really started talking about this idea in the last couple of weeks. And so as we have some more information and as we prepare some documents, we'll make sure and get that to the city council so you can see some of the specifics. We talked about some other outreach ideas, and as I just wanted to note, and that's why I put this together, you know, so a lot of this is in progress already, or some things we're doing. And so I think we have an opportunity to continue to do that, but also perhaps enhance some of those programs or ideas. And obviously, Nick talked about the Great Neighborhood Initiative, the community center, really the library spearheaded the Embody Embrace, I call it workshop or conference in January of this year. And they're working on an event for 2021. And then I thought another important piece to mention was that, you know, we've worked with the United Action for Youth, both from a training standpoint. They've helped us, I know, at the community center with training, but also for individual conflict resolution when we've had maybe someone who was kicked out of the community center or the rec center. We've then met with that person, and UAY kind of served as not only as a mediator, but also helped, in this case, helped this young man get back into the facility, and it's really been a great relationship. So I mentioned training, and obviously we've in our current curriculum, we have a implicit bias training that employees are required to do each year. We're looking at increasing those opportunities for employees, other equity and types of trainings. And then the PD, and I'll let Diane talk a little bit about this, but the PD, of course, as I mentioned last time, or a time maybe 2 meetings ago, they moved up a training, one of their implicit bias trainings, as the chief saw that as something she really wanted to tackle right away. And then Diane, maybe you can talk a little bit about the new state law that's going to require some additional training for officers.
Sure. Hello, everybody, and thanks for this opportunity. Yes, so the state law, we just voted at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy and Council how much training is going to be required. And really what we're looking at is there's two pieces to this. One is de-escalation training that's going to be mandated across the state for all law enforcement officers, and then also implicit bias training. And so it's going to be 2 hours mandatory for de-escalation and also 2 hours for implicit bias. What we're working on now is how that's going to, what's that delivery method going to be? It's not just, an online class. It's going to be, some interactions, some type of scenario-based training. And then the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy, we are currently getting people and trainers that are going to be able to come in and do train the trainer, so we can do more of this in-house. So it's not just all online, and have those instructors for each entity across the state. So that's exciting that's coming on board. We also just had, not only do we have the verbal judo instructor, we also just had an online class for another officer to become he did the de-escalation training. It was a week-long course, and now he's ready to give that course to our officers. So exciting stuff. We're willing to look at it, and we're ready to get that implemented as soon as possible.
Thanks, Chief. And then just one more comment on the topic of training. We currently have team members working with other local government organizations in the area to collaborate with on again, equity and diversity type training. And that's a relatively new committee that's formed probably within the last month. So I don't have a lot to report on that, but it includes folks from the county, from Iowa City, bringing in a lot of the smaller communities that may not have the resources to offer this type of training. So not only will it be a benefit to North Liberty, but also to all of Johnson County. And then just moving on, we've spent a great deal of time talking about the collection of police data, and we went through that at the last meeting. So we now have this mechanism in place where we can report that annually, and Diane already does reports monthly, and then we'll do a comprehensive report annually. And so we'll use the format or something similar that we've produced for the meeting a few weeks ago. And what I want to mention about that, and Diane, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there are very few, if any, departments that provide the data that we shared and that we've accumulated or that we've put together here. They're obviously they do share some data, but I think the level of detail we included in here, at least the last time I talked to the chief, is unique when compared to other departments across the state. Is that still a fair statement, Diane?
That is a fair statement. And I guess what brought that out is we were looking for other templates and basically best practices at other entities, and we could not find that. So this was something that we started. I'm sure it's going to get a push for other entities to release that as well. We do know that it is time consuming, but our record staff, myself and the lieutenant, were able to pull that together. And I know there's more data that needs to be collected that we want to share. So it's there. We just got to have the computer folks that can extract that data for us, and then we can be able to put it into a presentation that's easily digested by all.
And then something that we'll need discussed here sooner rather than later is what are we going to do with this data? I think we mentioned last time, you and I can look at a piece of data or some data and might have differing opinions about it. And so what are we going to do with this data, and what's it telling us? And the chief has been visiting with Dr. Chris Barnum from St. Ambrose University, and in that sheet that I sent out, I included his website. And this professor, a doctor, does a lot of analytical work and would be willing to help us through that. And maybe, Diane, if you want to, again, provide a quick high-level overview of what you see coming out of that.
Yes, so what Dr. Barnum provides, he either does it through the university or as on his own, is he does a data analysis for traffic stops and for just traffic contacts, and then searches that are done within that department. Unfortunately, you know, with collection all this data, it takes time. So he's looking at, if we commit to this, one, he needs a verbal commitment that we're going to agree to this. We need to have that collection piece in place. And then it's a 3-year commitment for him to come back, review. He has research assistants come in and assist. And then after the end of each year, then the expectation would be he would come before council and interpret what this means, what this means, what this means, just for that traffic stop and stopping individuals for searches or anything that are occurring on the street.
So if we get a sense from the city council, and again, I'm gonna continue to go through this, but we'll come back to this. But if we get a consensus that that's something you want to do, we can come back with a proposal in more detail from Dr. Barnum. I do want to. I will wrap.
That would be something I'm very interested in doing because it gives us a perspective from a neutral third party. And I think that's what's needed by all community on this one.
Yeah, and if you want to check this box right now, Ryan, I'm on that one too. We don't have to come back to this one later.
I concur. Absolutely.
Yep. Looks like I see others nodding.
Yeah, Ryan, I concur, but the piece that would interest me the most is I think collecting the data and doing the analytics review is easy on the negative side. How many negative contacts, how many arrests, how many searches, how many forceful arrests, those types of things. What's really difficult is to track the positive contacts. And so I don't know what the answer is, and maybe this doctor or a third party will have an idea of how we show positive contacts versus negative, because that's a very important piece. Not just citizens assist. Citizens assist is a number that can go up or down based on one individual that may fall 5 or 6 times a week, and we go and we assist them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more in-depth analytics of positive contacts with PD, our city. Maybe that's some data collection at City Hall of issues or concerns that come in versus problems that are solved and contacts that we do on the backside. Again, I don't know what that looks like, but those would be things that I would like to see included in that piece if we hire someone.
Well, we'll reach out to Dr. Barnum and get a proposal from him. I'm not sure it can be as inclusive as what you're asking for, Brent, but we'll do our best and bring something back for this group to chew on. I would like to just move through a couple other points here, and this next one I think is a real big one. And I had an opportunity this week to sit in on a meeting with Chief and the NAACP local president here. But I'll tell you, Diane has done a terrific job in establishing that relationship and working with Mr. Saunders, who's the local president here. And we talked about a number of things, and I've highlighted those here, but I think one of the bigger ones is that he's agreed to review complaints, concerns, to help mediate in certain situations, to provide us guidance when we need it, when there are race and equity issues that we need help with. And it was really it was one of 2 conversations I've had with him, and I know Diane's had several more, but I think there's a real opportunity to partner with Mr. Saunders, who's the local president here. Some of the other things then we talked about was their help in hosting Know Your Rights workshops for folks, also helping us with maybe a workshop getting juvenile interaction with police officers, so folks can see the friendly faces we have wearing blue. And then he also talked about the potential to offer citywide diversity training, and then also mentioned wants us to look at a community police relations ordinance, which we can get more information to you on that. Diane, anything to add to that?
No, it has been a great working relationship or partnership. We're still working through the legalities of him actually being able to see the complaints and the use of force. And Grant's been helping us with basically a non-disclosure, which will go through the NAACP legal to see if we can move forward. The reason why we want that route is just seemed a little bit quicker, that we could start the process a lot sooner than later. If we do end up with the full ordinance that the NAACP is recommending, then that is a community review board, then we probably would not need that additional piece oversight from the NAACP. So it's just part of the process. It's whatever this council's direction to move forward.
That's something, it's a great point. That's something that we could do virtually immediately. So the other piece that came out of that meeting, and some of you who are on one of those lists or the listening posts where I mentioned the fact that we have difficulty, we have challenges in hiring diversity simply because we're not seeing the applicants. And Mr. Saunders has agreed to share all of our job announcements with his network, which actually spans nationally. And so our plan will be to, when our HR director has a job advertisement ready to go, it'll get sent out to our normal advertising areas, such as the Iowa City Careers page and things of CR Careers, things of those natures. And then also we'll send it on to Mr. Saunders, who will get it to his network. So we're pretty excited about that as well, and look forward to the potential there. And then one of the ideas on here was to recruit social service organizations in North Liberty. And as you all know, later tonight, hopefully we'll move forward with the Ranshaw House final phase and eventually have space that we can offer our local social service providers some office space, whether that's holding office hours weekly or monthly, but just to get some exposure up here. So those are at least where I and our team see that we've made some progress, and there may be some things I haven't listed, and we can certainly get those updated as we continue to discuss. And then below that are a number of other ideas that were suggested or submitted, or that we heard at the listening posts, and that we haven't made any progress on or need more discussion if we're going to move a certain direction. So I think I'll leave it at that and turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you. For the folks who participated in the different listening sessions, was there a common theme that permeated yours and each other's as far as real deep down concerns that people had that they really want us to look at right away?
I think the thing I heard the most was, and read the most in the other listening post, was communication. And that's the first thing Nick and Ryan talked about, is establishing that. It would seem easy that if someone wanted to find out what's going on with the city, that they go to the website, first of all, track someone down that's on council or on staff and ask away or ask those questions. And I take for granted the fact that that's how I approach informing myself. And that's just simply not how we are going to be able to capture all of our residents and businesses. So I think that was the biggest thing that I heard. And Nick is already well in front of this and attempting to establish better communication, being more creative in those fronts.
Mayor?
Yes.
I guess as far as issues, so I try to categorize into maybe 4 broad things. 1, I agree, Chris, communication from a myriad of to and from. 2 was transparency. So some of the ones I guess I participated in, just how do we make information more transparent, data more transparent? 3, I had education. So there was just, I think, this openness and vulnerability to educating. And I think, Rakisha, we were a part of one. I think that face-to-face out at the pantry was just a pretty raw, and Chief, you were there, a raw dialogue, you know, between citizens and multi-generations and police officer. I mean, it was just, so I think education, people wanting it, but people not really sure how to go about it. So people saying, right, I don't know what to say, or, so I guess education is broad. And then 4.
Well, let me clarify some. Education was person-to-person contacts and dialogue.
Yes.
Okay.
But then also, how do we continue to educate our whole community about real situations that are happening? How do we bring that information to people and then work through problem solving with that? And then 4 broadly was just, I heard, we don't know, and read, we don't know where to start. How do we start? We know we want to do something. We want to do it the right way, but we just don't know how to get started as citizens. So I'll pause there and let my colleagues chime in here too.
Thank you.
I would have to agree that I think those were a lot of the common themes. Big on building better relationships within the community, especially when talking to that intergenerational component of how people are connected. I think there's a lot that comes with storytelling and sharing those truths, and acknowledging the fact that sometimes we are just oblivious to things that's happening in our community because, you know, we don't see it or we're not experiencing it ourselves. And so acknowledging that those things are happening, and then once, if we know that they're happening, how do we intervene or how do we address those without perpetuating it any further? And I would say that I think the conversations were good. I think that it keeps going back to just that communication, transparency, building relationships, wanting to know who's part of city staff, and where they stand with certain things, especially when it came to law enforcement, having the opportunity to say, like, we're here to build those relationships with our neighbors and our neighborhoods, but it can also be perceived as over policing if you're in certain areas more than other areas. And how do you fix that? And also encouraging people to get to know their neighbors. And I know that's a lot for us on the city, but if we celebrate diversity in who we have living here, because when you look around, it looks primarily white, but understanding that there is some diversity, it may be small in numbers, but there's diversity, and how do we continue to highlight that and celebrate all of that? And that was a common theme. I know we always talk about black and white because that's where a lot of the data is. You can find information on black and white, but we do have other races, other cultures, other people of color here that also want to be celebrated and highlighted, and we can do those things, and it doesn't take a lot. And I think that people want to be able to create those spaces and create that dialogue. And as we can see, even one of the community members giving us a book to even just start and have those conversations and learn what kind of language to use and how to approach situations without being so scary and taboo, which is something that we can demonstrate as well. Even having conversations like this for council is a starting space to provide those opportunities. And I think having a listening post opened that up because there was a lot of information shared, and people being able to build relationships and connections that they probably would not have prior to.
Thank you. Brent?
Mayor, I had similar, broke down the way that that Annie spoke to some of her topics. I had the community relations piece, folks want our police to stop and have positive interactions with them. They want to stop and have conversations and not feel that they're being, watched or that type of thing. I think some folks see over policing in certain areas of the city was a common concern that I heard. They want to see PD working with our youth at the high school. So hopefully when our kids get back into the classrooms, we can have more interaction in a positive manner out at the high schools. And then that more diverse workforce, they want to see folks that look like them in representing their race in city government. And, a couple of other thoughts. Recruiting a diverse workforce is difficult, but the recruitment is even more difficult. The retention is more difficult than the recruitment. We have to be a place that, is inclusive. We need programming and housing and quality of life things for all types of people. So that's something we need to keep in mind as we go and start recruiting a diverse workforce. We got to be able to retain them. And then finally, I would say, I know from talking to Chief and seeing the way that she conducts business, our police officers want these things too. And I have seen them make attempts and try to reach out in the ways that they know how. And in some circumstances, they receive pushback from folks that don't want to see them and don't want to have that interaction. And maybe it's from negative interactions that they've had with our department specifically, but maybe they're negative interactions that they've had with law enforcement outside of here that they, have those ideas or thoughts as they live here as well. So I'm also cognizant, Chief, that you and your officers are and have been doing good work, that you are open to improving and doing some different things and improving on things. But I just think that community relations piece is very important. I think Nick is he's very good at that. And he's a tremendous resource that we have here within our staff, and we can lean heavily on him as we start to have those conversations and build those networks.
I hear the comment about wanting to see more people in city or government, but I think it's just important, if not so more, that people of any culture or race want to see their people succeed, not only in the public, but in private business. And the thing is, the education has to be broad-based and has to be intuitive, and people have to be brought along to say, look, if you want to be successful, you need to do this and this and this, and then foster people along. It's not easy. It's not easy at all at times, but the thing is, the professionalism of the job, and a child, teenager, young adult can see this person be successful. They do have some examples they can follow through on and have examples of, but they still need to have the desire built in. And that's where I think local education and education agencies need to pursue a little better at times. So, that's my thoughts on it.
If I could come back to a couple of things, Mayor, you asked us for the thing that we heard the most on there, but there were certainly some other thoughts that I have on maybe not what we need the city to do for us or to do for our residents, but an example of what I'm doing right now and what I think every one of us needs to take upon ourselves is a little bit of what you just said, and that's education. Brent, I don't know how long ago, how many weeks it's been now. Every day is Monday, Wednesday, you called it, but you and I sat in on an implicit bias training that was sponsored by the city of Iowa City. And Ryan, you talked about training that you were discussing countywide, and I know that you all have taken implicit bias training at the city. Chief, you mentioned it in your bullet points there, but it really, as much as it was helpful to me, it was also, I was so wanting for more. I was wanting for there to be more insight as to how we could change our culture, not necessarily in our city, but in our own lives and how we perceive the world and interact with it. So along with the implicit bias, they kind of set us up for the fact that we need more training. We need more diversity training. So while you are all doing, you're trying to bring this training to city staff, which is what we're all here to talk about in the city government, I think our community would also benefit in some type of really formal type of education-led discussion on diversity training and how we can all get better, because we all have a bias. Every single person on this planet has a bias, and some of them we're incredibly aware of. Others we have no clue around us. So understanding that bias is going to help us to not only be better servants in this capacity as counselors or as staff, but also just better human beings and better people for the cities and the communities that we live in. So I'd like to see more of a way for us to bring this to the city, not for city staff purposes, but for the community at whole that would want to be a part of this type of training. I mentioned in my listening post, one of them that I was a part of, that I had 3 books lined up. This is my way of educating and getting myself on board. I'm 2 down, and I have 1 more to go in that way. And this is a lifelong event, a lifelong process that I'm going to be a part of. And that's what I would want others to join and do here in the city. And while I've got the stage, I wanted to ask about the, Ryan, one of the last things you mentioned was engaging Dr. Barnum and that we would want to do that. Sure. I'm confused, or I'm kind of concerned, not concerned. It seems like one of the last things that you had a point about was that job postings would make sure that he was getting and putting them out into those communities, so that we knew that they knew about. My question is, why wouldn't anyone that's interested in city government already be aware of those? And I guess it's an open-ended question, Ryan or anybody, but I'm appreciative of the fact that there will be other ways to get job postings out there. But culturally, why doesn't that already happen? Why does it take a person that's the president of the local NAACP to put this out there to make it any more real than what it already should be? And that's not a question any of us can answer right here, but I'm curious about these things. So for me, it's about education, and it's about what else we can learn, and we can, if you know stuff, teach other people about.
I'll take a shot at that last question. I just want to clarify, Chris, Dr. Barnum is not, Dr. Barnum's with St. Andrews University.
My apologies. I wrote them. I had them both.
I just want to make sure we're all clear. Kevin Saunders is the local.
Mr. Saunders, excuse me. Yep.
And, when we advertise for jobs, and if it's a management job, for example, most recently the city planner, we go nationwide on that, and we're putting it out on planning professional organization websites. We put it out on the International City Managers website. We're putting it out, really to try to obviously recruit the best talent that we can. This is just another potential, and maybe it's someone who, isn't looking at those websites at the time, or maybe it's someone who knows someone who might be interested in the job. So it's really just another avenue. And I think even if it's maybe just depending on the job, it might be someone who's just looking for a career change and doesn't know where to start. And we have, I think, a pretty good record at our city in terms of bringing in an employee and then elevating them up through the ranks. And in fact, Michael's a pretty darn good example of that. I think he came to the city working initially for the street department, right, Michael? Is that? Yep. And then obtained his water certifications, became the assistant superintendent there, and then of course now is the street superintendent. So, and there are other stories like that. And so, you know, it may not be a position where it's a management position right away, but someone who, you know, starts closer to the entry level and then works their way up. So I'm kind of rambling on that, but that's where I see the potential in another avenue. And then the only other point I wanted to make, Chris, on the training aspect, I think that's a good point. It's something that Jenny's excited to bring to the library. She's done some of that in other topics already. Iowa City's approach was great. I think they had a max of 150 people that could attend that virtual training. I sat in on it as well. So I think there are potentials there to start doing that stuff. And then, you know, for folks who want to do it on their own, there are a lot of opportunities out there as well. And you've mentioned that through reading books and other websites and webinars folks can join.
If I could just add one more thing, is Chris, I think what's important is whether it's jobs or whether it's other community information, is that us being proactive and making sure that people feel welcome to that information, whether it's welcome to apply for jobs or welcome to come into our community center or welcome to reach out to council or staff. And I think that's just a slightly different sort of way for us to approach it, rather than maybe not just pushing things out, but making sure that we're doing it in a way that's inclusive and welcoming.
Anything else, Paul? Good job.
Yeah, so I have a couple things that popped up when we were talking as people were trying to find things for the kids to do, you know, and some of it was, you know, at the rec center. And so Shelley did quite a bit of talking about, you know, that and getting people where they could access the rec center when we can access the rec center on a full-time basis. And as, you know, letting people be able to use the facilities, and there is a cost to it, and that may be prohibitive for some people. So they're trying to work out a way for that. And one of the things I found was, you know, or heard about, was a lot of people are really willing to do a lot of stuff. They just don't know that they need what needs to be done. And so keeping track of things, you know, such as that is will be helpful in the future, because there's a lot of people who are really, hey, what can I do? And they all want to be part of the solution to things, but sometimes it's just hard to get going on that. I will kind of echo a little bit with Chris. You know, there's a lot of people who are talking about, you know, the city needs to do this, the city needs to do this, the city needs to do this. Yes, the city needs to do this, the city needs to do this, the city needs to do this. But to overall, you know, make society better, that's an individual person needs to do that. And an individual needs to learn and learn to be respectful and learn that, you know, not everybody thinks the same way they do, and you need to, you know, really look into other people's viewpoints when you're making decisions and interacting with folks and stuff. So I think it's really important that, you know, as Chris said, is people kind of need to educate themselves on what they know, and also they need to educate themselves on what they don't know, and so they can become a better person on that. So.
Thanks, Brian. I still refer myself at times to the old Pogo comic strip. And one of the most famous lines in that was, "We have met the enemy and it is us." Well, I think that kind of fits the situation here that we're facing at this time in various degrees. Rakisha, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, like, I totally agree with the fact that people need to educate themselves. And not be afraid to ask questions. I think a lot of pressure is on the city, because it's like, okay, are we talking about it? Are, like, what's happening behind the scenes in terms of training? So it falls back on us, right? Again, the city, and making sure that it's transparent. And now that we are doing a lot more of that, you know, Chief, thank you for, you know, getting the data and everything out, and they see that we're talking about it. It also allows them to look. It's easy for Nick to put some information out there every once in a while in terms of a a film or, you know, something to celebrate those, because it's a lot about cultural competence. Once you get past cultural competency, is cultural humility. And that's where people need to get to in understanding those perspectives as well. And they can do that on their own, but they also have to be willing to diversify just their groups and who they are around all the time. And that can be uncomfortable. But given the opportunity to have safe spaces to do that. And sometimes people depend on that to be the city to say, these are events or workshops that we will be able to host. And it could very well be with some of those nonprofit organizations that's coming in that tend to work with the most diverse groups. And that's a way for us to partner with them. So we're still having that dialogue and those interactions with people who live in our communities as well. So I do think that there's a way to do that. And I also think that as we are learning and addressing our own implicit biases and addressing our own baggage, that we're able to talk about that and address it and share some of the things that we've learned along the way. Because I do think that, you know, having a listening post were very helpful. It provided some more context in terms of what people did know and what they did not know about what was going on in our very own community, in our backyard, down the street, with people that we may have lived next to for years. And so I think that there's a lot to do it, and people have to also realize that this won't be an overnight process, that it will take time, and to be patient and to work and to continue to provide suggestions and ideas, just like how we're sitting here talking, because we can't solve this issue just sitting here on the Zoom meeting or at a council meeting, but the work is going to have to fall back on our community as a whole. And so that's where I think we're going, and continuing to bring this up periodically would be amazing and good for our community as well.
Rakisha, I have a question. I know we've talked about the fact that we've really struggled at getting people of color to the listening post, to the community event that you held. But on the flip side of that, I saw a lot of white people at those events. And do you think that our residents of color have felt the support from our white community, since we are a majority of white folks in North Liberty? Have they felt the support of us through these events? Are you hearing that from your network, or no? Because I have.
I think being able to have the opportunities to feel listened is impactful. It's also a trust thing that goes with that, of hashing out all the information. And like I've said before, and I'll say it again, like, I'm not the spokesperson for people of color, so I don't necessarily know, their hash, but the conversations are happening, whether or not they're happening at a public event like that. They're happening, and people are talking about it, and that's how a lot of like the stories and all of that are shared. Sometimes it's scary to come out and say, well, this incident happened to me, because you don't know who knows the landlord that you're renting from, and you're talking about a situation that could potentially backfire on you, and then you're out on the street, or your employer. So people have to be very cautious and careful about that sharing those things with large groups that they don't know, and building that trust. So I think it takes time. Also, sometimes we have to go to where those families are. If it's more comfortable going into their neighborhoods where they can come out and have those conversations, and that's what we have to do. And I will tell you, from just doing events and from here to Iowa City, it's the same. When people want to come out and really feel involved and invested, they know how to find you and they give you that information and they'll come out. But sometimes things get so whitewashed, I'll say, and watered down that it's kind of like it's taken away from highlighting the situation at hand when it comes to people of color, to put it in so many words. And so just continuing to be creative in our approach. It's not a one size fits all approach in terms of we put something out on social media in terms of an event. I've been told by people that say, hey, I'm old school and I need a flyer. Like I need to have something tangible in my hand to remind me that this event is going on, or I may very well need transportation. And that's not something we weren't really considering. Well, we had the listening post where we figured it would be most convenient, but we also didn't address, transportation barriers or what have you. So there's a lot of things that play into that, but we also can be creative. Again, this is not the only time that we will have these conversations, and we're here saying that we are here to listen, and they can contact us so we can reach out to them whatever way it goes, but we have to be creative in our approach.
Anything else? Amy?
This was really helpful just to hear everyone's conversation here. And I think, right, this isn't going to go away. We don't want it to go away. And I think everyone, we saw the faces I can see, right? I mean, we have a responsibility. We have an obligation and a responsibility to make our community the best we can absolutely make it. So I think great ideas, great discussion. Ryan, it was really helpful seeing that and having you and Chief and Nick walk through that tonight. And I know there's other ideas on the bottom there. But one thing, and I'm happy, Mayor, to sort of take a draft lead at this, is to put some sort of structure, like a framework around this. What is the governance? How do we prioritize the ideas? How do those ideas come up? How do we engage and get, just the listening post I was at, there was at least 4 people that attended the Zoom and the one in person. And again, saying, Brian, to your point earlier here tonight, I don't know how to get involved. I want to help. So, thinking out, there's ideas, but do we have some sort of governance advisory board that could report out to us here as a city council that is made up of, citizens, employers, I think that's really important, and city staff and leaders. So, Mayor, with your permission, I'd like to just draft that. I can share it with you, but at least so then that way we'd have a framework to continue this dialogue. I think it's really important. And then we can just, as we're continuing to learn and evolve and educate. And Nick, I love the, just the Good Neighbor initiative. Obviously, that's going to continue to bring information, but so I'd like to put a little more framework around it.
You got the job.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else, people?
I did forget to mention, thank you to Becky for giving us the book that she brought out to everybody and stuff. So I've been reading through that. I'm not all the way through it. I'm not as fast a reader as Chris, but.
Audiobooks, Brian, audiobooks.
Okay, we'll move on ahead. Thank you for a great discussion, people. We have nuisance enumerated. This will be the third consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2020-11, an ordinance amending chapter 50.02, North Liberty Code of Ordinances to include obstruction of public easements and an enumerated nuisance. Anyone wish to establish the third and final reading?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion or questions? Tracy, would you take roll, please?
Smith,
Aye.
Pollock,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Third and final reading passes 5 affirmative, none opposed. Branshaw House Project Phase 2. Did we want to have a little discussion on this before we entered into the resolution? The background of what happened and where we're at, so everybody understands.
We could ask Alan Wieskamp, who's on the line, to give us a quick overview, if that's acceptable, Mayor.
Yes, please do.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, the bids were a bit disappointing. I've spent the past just about a week trying to dive into the numbers, and there were a couple of anomalies that we can look into more. I think Brian had sent you our download of that, what we learned. And one of the kind of low-hanging fruit was the painter that provided bids to all 3 of the bidders included lead paint abatement on the project, which is not required. I've got confirmation from our hazardous material testing folks. Lead paint abatement is only required in federal housing, HUD funded projects. And most of the lead paint that would be existing is already covered, is already concealed. So we had chosen in our bid documents to just ignore that or not require the lead paint removal. So they chose to include that, and that amounted to roughly $20,000 worth of effort, both in removal material, handbagging, and hazardous waste disposal fees, and the labor to apply this removal paste and to remove it, and then clean the substrate and prep it for new paint. So that's something that's easily changed in the documents moving forward. I've spoken with the low bidder, Brian Wolf of Wolf Construction, and he said he would not have any issues with doing a contract deduct change order to remove that from the project. And there are some other items. I have to appreciate where the contractors were. They were very busy, but they did take the time to break their bids down, which is very difficult after the fact, to provide me numbers that relates to how we produced our cost estimate. But there were some other anomalies that were far off from our estimate. We assumed it'd be roughly $3,000 for plaster repair, and their bids were $33,000. So that's another item that I would like to look into. Brian Wolf could not put his hands or get a hold of the plaster repair guy, so we could dive into that more, but certainly I think that number could come down as well. And that gets us closer in line. All the other items, speaking with Mr. Wolf, there's a wide variety in their bids for labor. And this is unfortunately a labor intensive set of work on the house. You know, it's just a lot of repairs and a lot of labor. Just as a single point, something that they could break out fairly easily, construct the handicap ramp. Our number in our bid or our estimate was $32,000. Brian Wolf was around 25,000, so he was under our estimate. Yet McComas Lucina was 58,000, so well over double his price, and a lot of that was just how they got their labor and who was doing the work, whether it's a finished carpenter to do the rails or a rough carpenter that's doing the framing and that. So the bids varied, widely for the same amount of work. And most of the feedback I got was labor is highly volatile right now. So I hate to blame it on the derecho storm, but your bids came in right after the storm, and there was a lot of bidders that either had numbers to put together relatively quickly and didn't know what the labor force was going to bring, or just frankly padded some of their numbers on some of the high labor pieces. That's the best I have for you based on the input I had from Mr. Wolf. So other than that, a lot of the numbers came in right where we expected them. So I don't think it was across the board that all items were really out of the norm, but there were a few things that were labor related. And I think, frankly, a misunderstanding of the big documents that we could be that far off with our numbers versus where the bids came in. But we're looking forward to maybe working with you to find other reductions and get to the real scope and come up with a better number. And Mr. Wolf said he would be willing to do that.
Okay. Questions?
The only question I had, as I thought of it, when they're doing wiring, are we wiring it for internet?
No, we have not done any of that infrastructure in the house.
Because there's a bunch of people working on it or working there, so I bet they're going to need computers that are going to work. So.
Right, to that point, why did we decide not to include that?
I think there's data out there. We weren't sure what the final use of the site was going to be and who was going to occupy it. I think we had inkling of who was going to be in there. Originally, when we first started this project, it was going to be sort of a kind of history, and the summer program was going to be there. Whether we were going to do a hotspot for that or whether it was going to be full-time, we didn't fully understand. So that's something that we could add in, but it wasn't something we really discussed. It was mostly getting the building weather tight at this point that we were concerned with.
Yeah, I would just add, I envision this similar to when we moved into our current City Hall facility in terms of upgrading some of those things, making sure they have Wi-Fi available. It's a great point, Brian. And once we are a little further along, I don't know that that's going to, of course, we would bring in our IT person to help us with this, much like he did at City Hall when we moved into there. So I think we'll be okay there when we're ready to put people in.
Questions?
Yeah, just to follow up on that one, I think I'm probably less concerned about internet now than I would have been 5 years ago. I think it would probably be pretty easy to get a hotspot in there someplace. People aren't going to be plugging their computers into a wall anymore. They're going to be putting a laptop down and looking for that hotspot. I guess my questions are kind of what do we do right now? Because Alan, you've said that you've got Mr. Wolf's commitment to eliminate that $20,000 for the asbestos, in the paint. And you've also talked about plaster as something in there. Ryan, what do we do? How do we proceed with an awarding of contract that is going to need a little bit of work yet? As anxious as I am to get this going, how close do we need to be?
I think we can do this similarly to how we awarded the police department contract, and we awarded that with the understanding that we'd be coming back with a deduct change order. And so that's what we would do here. We'd ask you to proceed this evening, approving the resolution with the understanding that we're working on some deducts with the general contractor, and then that'll be the first the first thing that we come back to the city council with is an official change order, taking out the money for the paint, and then if there's anything else that they can find, deducting that as well.
I gotcha.
And we
So
got
the work,
my apologies. We did get a written confirmation from the contractor that he is willing to make these deducts based on the conversations we've had.
okay. And when you talked about the police department, you're talking about the value engineering work that we did to reduce that part of that contract?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. I have absolutely no problem doing that with Mr. Wolf here. I think he'll be a responsible bidder one way or the other there.
And council, just a heads up, they cleared this with me too. It's legit for legal purposes.
All right. Awesome.
Mayor, if I could.
Yes.
This just doesn't feel right. I'm not comfortable with this. The $20,000 change order, I'm fine with. I understand that. Alan, I really appreciate the work you're putting in. And I love the idea of moving this thing forward to be able to put services, much needed services in that building. But this is too messy. And I think the timing of the storm certainly hurts that. And I think that when I hear doubling of prices for things like an ADA ramp, that shows me I don't want to use the term gouging, but I think anything that gets tagged with ADA with the city, sometimes contractors can take advantage of that. I'm sorry, but I'm going to make a motion to table until we can get this cleaned up.
Making that an official motion.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there a second to table the item?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Tabling is non-debatable. Tracy, take roll.
Pollock,
Aye.
Hoffman,
Nay.
Wason,
No.
Smith,
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Motion to table passes 3 affirmative, 2 opposed. Will be tabled until the next regular council meeting. Okay, the Duran rezoning request. Now's the time for a public hearing regarding the proposed rezoning application. And the rezoning application is what specifically, just for the audience?
Hello, good evening. We are considering rezoning for an eventual subdivision, and we are going to build a single-family 2-story home on our vacant lot. We feel that would be a great opportunity for us and our family to grow and blend with our neighborhood.
Okay. So now's the public hearing is now open. To receive any written comment in regards to the rezoning, Tracy?
No comments were received.
Do you wish to make any further comment, Tyler, as far as your project?
No, that pretty much sums it up. We're just looking to build on this vacant lot. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to a new home and also for our financial future.
Comment, call the public hearing to a close. Planning Commission and staff recommendations. Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Just to give you an idea where the property is, it's at the northwest corner of Jones Boulevard and Chipman Lane. Obviously, when this new street came in, this provided the opportunity for the Durans to subdivide the property. Land use for the comprehensive plan is residential in this area. And there's a mixture of zoning in this area. You have commercial to the east, you've got higher density residential to the south, you've got higher density to the west, and to the north is RS4. So the property is currently zoned ID interim development, which is kind of a holding pattern So they'd be requesting this RS4 property to allow them to, and a future subdivision plat would come forward to you. We did have a neighborhood meeting on June 25th. One person showed up, just had some general questions. Other than that, there's been no objections.
Good.
So staff does recommend approval, as the Planning Commission did on July 21st.
Thank you. This will be the first consideration of ordinance number 2020-12. Ordinance amending chapter 167, North Liberty Code of Ordinances by amending the use regulations on property located at 1475 South Jones Boulevard, located in North Liberty, Iowa, to those set forth in the municipal code for the RS4 single unit residence district. Anyone wish to establish the first consideration?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Final discussions or questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for planning, Ryan. So is this really an empty lot, or is this just a large single lot that we're dividing into two?
This is a large single lot. It's an acre. Was an existing lot, and so when they developed this subdivision to the south, it really opened up and provided the opportunity just to subdivide one larger lot into two smaller ones. They'll still be sizable.
All right. So, and the only reason they can do that is not because they have street frontage on that side, or could my next door neighbor do the same thing?
No, it's really the street frontage. It was a pretty good opportunity that they were provided, that a street came through with a sidewalk, and it really provided them with the opportunity to subdivide. So that the subdivided lot, the western half of the lot, would actually have frontage on Chipman Lane. So this isn't what I would consider a usual circumstance at all.
Okay. So just want to make sure that like somebody on Forever Green Road couldn't like extend a driveway and then divide their things. Okay.
Yep.
Right. So on that note, or Brian, did you have more?
Nope, I just want to make sure I understood what we were doing.
So will the driveway then be on the south? Because we've got the one on the east. So will the next drive be on the south
Let me
side?
share my screen again. So yeah, so it basically have the western half of the lot over here, and then it'll have a driveway entrance on Chipman Lane here.
Okay.
And then the existing drive on Jones Boulevard would remain.
Other questions? Tracy, would you take roll, please?
Wason,
Aye.
Pollock,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
This consideration passes 5 affirmative, none opposed. Next item is the LJP rezoning request. Ryan, can you just go over this real quickly as far as what it actually entails?
Absolutely. So this is it's a rezoning. It's not a zoning classification that, my understanding, that you've seen very much of. I don't see any of it on the zoning map. But this is for an RSO, single unit residence special use district. And it's really a very, very limited zoning classification. It's actually a residential zoning classification that only allows for an existing residence to be used as a professional office. And a lot of times this exact same use could be used as a home occupation without the need for a rezoning if you had lived in the property. And so the applicant, Mr. Peoples, does not intend to live at the property, and so that takes the home occupation basically out of it. And so I've never quite seen a zoning classification like this that's so limited, but I understand the concept behind it. It's to really make sure it doesn't become incompatible with surrounding residential properties, which they're nearby. And you also aren't introducing commercial zoning into an area. But I can provide a screen capture with kind of the restrictions on the use and signage and things like that, if you would like to see that.
We'll do it under your presentation, okay? Thank you. Now's the time for a public hearing regarding proposed rezoning application. Mr. Peoples, do you have any comments, sir? You're on mute.
Okay. No real comments. I'm just here to answer any questions that you might have.
Annie?
Matt, can you just give us, obviously you read the information, but can you just tell us in your own words why you're looking to do this or how you had this idea?
I like the property, I guess, and it just in searching for an office space, it was just something that stood out to me. Actually, a realtor brought it to me and thought there was a potential, and I like the idea. I want to kind of renovate the house to look like a old farmhouse feel, which I think it's one of the oldest farmhouses in North Liberty. It was built in the late 1800s, and just kind of want to keep with that style and feel, and put my office in there.
Else wishing to make public comment, or did we receive any public comment, Tracy?
No, none was received.
Thank you. Hearing that, call the public hearing to a close. Russ?
Yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen again, or share my screen. Okay, so here's property location. The area that's requesting rezoning is in this crosshatch. It's actually a larger piece of property that extends south. This portion of the property to the south is currently zoned RS4. The portion, if we would just kind of straighten off here, is zoned RD10, which allows for duplex use. It's my understanding at some point in the house's history, it became a duplex. Currently has a driveway access off of Penn Street here. And then kind of this dips down here to include this existing parking area that's right here. These are some of the restrictions I was talking about in the zoning classification. It has to be a professional office only. It requires the applicant to provide a written agreement. There could be no more than 7 full-time employees on the property, including the property owner. Mr. People has previously indicated that it would be himself and one more additional person. The adequate off-street parking for each employee. So this is another restriction. So there's only a couple of parking spaces existing in the back. Doesn't allow any exterior display, no exterior signage, no walk-in or retail business, subject to an annual inspection and maintained character of the area. So these are the types of things that I was talking about, really to allow it to be compatible with surrounding residential properties. And I would say this property is a little bit different because it's located at the intersection of an arterial road, being Penn Street, and I believe Dubuque Street is also a minor arterial road. And so you're pushed up to what would consider kind of an edge, a busier street. I would feel less comfortable about something like this being in the middle of a neighborhood as opposed to a location of major streets in our city. Comprehensive plan, again, shows residential. So this is a residential zoning, so it would be consistent with that. And here is the zoning map. Again, property goes down here. But quite a mixture of zonings in this area because we've got a mixture of housing types and densities in this area. So I think it's a good use for this property. I think it was becoming a little dilapidated. And so Mr. Peoples, I know, has already put a fair amount of money into it to rehab it. Also like to give him credit that he really went out to the neighborhood and spoke with neighbors about what he was proposing to do. Just because your initial reaction to this the initial reaction I received is, hey, we don't want commercial here. And so he really took the time to talk to people in the neighborhood, describe what he was doing. And to his credit, when we had the neighborhood meeting on the June 25th, we only had 3 people come. And again, they just had general questions and seemed to be comfortable. If it was for a rezoning for this type of use, they would be comfortable with it. So in that light, staff recommends approval of the request, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval on July 31st. Thank you.
Any questions for Russ? If not, this will be the first consideration of ordinance number 2020-13. Ordinance amending Chapter 167, North Liberty Code of Ordinances by amending the use regulations on property located at 205 West Penn Street, located in North Liberty, Iowa, those set forth for the RSO, Single Unit Residential Special Use District. Anyone wish to establish the first consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Final discussion or questions?
Matt, I just wanted to say thank you for the time you took in talking to residents nearby. When we first heard of this a couple of months ago, Russ probably mentioned this to you. It was in a pretty negative light. There were some folks concerned about what could be over there. So I'm glad you took the time to answer those questions as best you could. And I still had questions up until the time I got this packet. So this is, I've turned a lot of corners on this, and I'm excited for you and the development of that property there. And that home is old, and I'm glad that it's still going to stay there and be of value to us.
Thank you.
Chris, I agree. I couldn't wrap my head around the reason why someone would have to do this. Look at what we're all doing right now. Our home is our office right now, is it not? I mean, 80% of America is using their house as an office. So, you know, the fact that Matt has gone out and, you know, done the right thing and said, look, I'm not going to live here. I'm just going to have my office here. And then even went the next step to go around and talk to the neighbors and ease everybody's concerns. You know, I don't think many others would have done that. So, Matt, thank you.
Thank you.
Can this only be office space now, or so you can't like rent the upstairs out for like living?
You know, I think that's debatable, and I know Matt and I have kind of debated what the code provision is. I think I'd have to probably seek the city attorney's advice on that, but you know, the zoning is extremely restrictive, and so I would say at most you could rent the upstairs, but I'm not clear that you could do that because it just talks about this district allows for conversion of a house to a professional office.
Can we just maybe have like the legal person check on that before the next meeting?
I'll be happy to.
Thank you. And I think I have no other problems.
Okay. Ready to vote?
Yep.
Tracy, take roll.
Smith,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Pollock,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye. Thanks, Russ, and thanks, legal person.
Consideration passes 5 considered, 5 affirmative, none opposed. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Next one is CARES resolution. Tracy, want to just give a snippet on what that does?
Absolutely. This is the first step in our process of being able to apply to the state for reimbursement for expenses incurred during the COVID crisis. The resolution is for the full amount that the city is eligible up to a maximum of. And I'm going to do everything in my power to draw every penny we can from that pot of money. So
Therefore, we're asking passage of resolution number 2020-67. Resolution authorizing a request for reimbursement of eligible costs related to the COVID-19 public health emergency from the Iowa COVID-19 Government Relief Fund. Anyone wish to establish that resolution?
So moved. Second.
Seconded. Any other comments?
Just thanks to the staff for doing all the paperwork for that. It is a lot of paperwork to get all that stuff in.
Tracy, I had two clarification questions. You mentioned that this is the limit on the dollar amount that we can apply for. Is that because that's like a state number? This is as much as any city or population can get to, and you're nodding your head, or is it because of all the qualifying expenses that could be put into that pool that's the dollar amount we come up with?
the state put forth a list and said, City of North Liberty, you are eligible for $463,000.
Gotcha.
So every city has a maximum eligibility.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you take roll, please?
Harrington,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Pollock.
Aye.
Resolution passes 5 affirmative and none opposed. Old business.
Yeah,
I
just
guess, yeah, go ahead, Brian.
one thing. You may be seeing in the news that this coronavirus thing is not going away. And so people just please, please, please be careful. Wash your hands. If you can wear a mask, it really does help. And try and stay away from places where there's going to be a lot of crowds, because we're seeing more people in the hospital, and I don't want to get back like we were earlier this year.
The positivity rate over the last 3 days has been closing in about 30+% test. I don't know if that will make it different for the school system or not, but it sure has an impact here. Any other old business?
Yeah, this was just one day old business at our last council meeting, but I wanted to again end how we started this meeting by thanking city staff. And we saw the report that our fire chief put in on there. They had an extraordinary 24 hours. So we didn't officially get to thank yous 2 weeks ago, but thank you everyone for what you're doing for us and for our residents.
New business. If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you for your participation this evening.